And we'll share the screen and pull up the agenda. I don't know. I know Dr. Revis has, and I have. Dr. Hamilton, did y'all get a chance to put that on our week one in Blackboard yet? The agenda.
I did not put the agenda
Okay,
under week one.
but you and Dr. Crawford, if you will, just want to remind the students that it's not there. You'll be able to find this under week one as well for future reference. But we just want to welcome you to our session one of our coaching session. And this is one of 4 that you will have for the AAPSL. The first few weeks is pretty rigorous, and we feel like that coming together back-to-back weeks really prepares you for success in the rest of the program. So that is why we stack up front so much, and then you will find that we start backing off and giving you freedom to do some things on your own. But again, thank you for choosing Gardner-Webb University, and thank you for showing up tonight. So far, there's 72 people here, and they keep coming in. So this speaks volumes for this group. Dr. Revis and I were talking after class on Tuesday night, and I think and we had a large group. There's 3 classes in there, and I think all of them, but maybe 1 or 2 were there. So that speaks volumes for your commitment to this program, and we thank you for being here this evening. Very quickly, you can see on the screen what this evening is going to look like. Again, I've brought you welcome. You know who your instructors are. You've met us all already. Dr. Revis is on the screen, Dr. Crawford, Dr. Hamilton, Dr. Boeing-Nutting is working with them as well. She's with us, and Dr. Lamb I saw him on the screen. He'll be with us, and he'll comment throughout, and especially.
I'm here.
Hey, Dr. Lamb, and he'll be able to just put his wisdom and expertise in there anytime he wants to, but especially towards the end. Dr. Lamb is going to take charge weeks 3 and 4, and he pretty much has weeks 3 and 4, and he has a lot to share at that time. The primary focus, as you can see on the screen of session 1, is to fully introduce Evidence 1, the AAPSL, the Analysis and Action Plan for Student Learning. And all that we do in the school business, is all about the child. It's all about student learning. And if that's not what it's about, student learning, student achievement, then, something's wrong. So that's why Evidence 1 is how we begin. The AAPSL is how we begin this program of study. We begin with student learning and the child in mind. We feel like that it's important that while there's five major tasks for Evidence 1, the AAPSL, we feel like it's important up front that I mentioned to you on Tuesday night, that when you look at it, it's overwhelming because you see the whole elephant. Well, we're going to give you the whole elephant tonight, but there's a rhyme and reason behind it. We feel like that for you to be successful in completing task 1 and understanding task 2 and moving forward to task 3 and task 4 with your action plan, we feel like that you have to understand, what the end should look like. So the purpose of this evening is not to give you, expect you to understand it all. That's why we have week 2, week 3, week 4, and week 5, where we will take each of these tasks individually. But we want you to get a global understanding of what it is this program is about and what the AAPSL is all about. So this evening, our staff is going to take each of the tasks. They're going to break it down, and they're going to share with you what each task looks like, so you'll understand what the end results of the AAPSL should be as you're beginning task 1, as you're talking to your PLC that you're forming. So that's why we're here tonight. We ask if it's an important question, put it in the chat, and one of us will try to respond. We don't expect you to ask a lot of questions. about tasks 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's going to come whenever we whenever we break it down on our Tuesday night classes. So, you know, we don't expect a lot of questions from that because we're not there yet. This is just an awareness. However, with task 1, as you're working on that, and we've already gone over that Tuesday evening, if there are still questions about that, we'll have some time for that this evening. So with that in mind, I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Crawford, who is going to talk with you at this time. We went over it on Tuesday, but he's going to go in detail about it tonight, about the school profile.
Well, let's try this again. Good evening, folks. One of the first tasks that you're going to tackle is your school profile. To keep this simple, basically what you're going to do is you are going to tell the story of your school. And you want that story to be as comprehensive but as relevant as possible. So one of the first questions people ask is, that comes to mind as well, how many pages? And there's not really an answer to that. What you want to do is make sure you tell us a complete picture, or as complete a picture as possible, of your school. So let me show you one that was done by a previous student to give you an idea of what we are, what a good comprehensive profile will look like. Let me enlarge this. So this particular student was working at the time at Dudley High School here in Greensboro. I'm in High Point, just around the way. So she starts off, where the city is of the school is located. Gave a population estimate of the school, median household. Gives you kind of a big picture of where the school sits, the fact that it's part of the Guilford County school system, which encompasses High Point. Then her next paragraph, she delves right into relevant details of the school itself. The fact that it's a Title I school, the population, the fact that 100% of the students receive free lunch. She breaks down percentage of students in EC and also ESL here as well. She then goes a little further into how many licensed teachers there are in the building. She even breaks that down by department and things of that nature, highly qualified. And then going into the school itself. So this now, there's a couple of things here I'm going to point out to you that, and this draft was early on, which is why I chose it, because there were some things that we wound up fixing later on that I hope to save you from as you begin your school profile. So this gave a quick down and dirty of the school with relevant information that told a quick story of the school. Now, couple of things that I want all of you to bear in mind as you start. And not only does this go with the information that you're about to gather for the school profile, but any other thing that you're going to work on throughout each of the tasks in the AAPSL and the AAPTL. But specifically to your school profile, if a piece of information is not common knowledge, then folks, you must remember to cite your source of where that information came from. All right. So one of the things we wound up fixing with this group profile, and it's not uncommon that'll happen. The population of Greensboro, the median household income, the number of students involved, all those things are pieces of information that you would likely have gotten somewhere. So you want to make sure that anything that is not common knowledge is information that you cite. So where do I go to get this type of information? Well, ladies and gentlemen, keep it simple. In many cases, you can go right to the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Each school has a report card, and on a report card are many of those pieces of relevant information. That would be a source. The school's webpage and or specifically on that webpage, the school improvement plan for the school, which is a posted legal document that all schools in North Carolina must have. And part of that information on the school improvement plan, there is a profile that's done for the school. If that's where you cited your information, that's where you can cite that source. If you cite information like the population of the city or town that your school sits in, whether you're in a small rural town or one of the larger urban areas of the center of the state. You will oftentimes go to like .gov or .state types of sites that will post that most relevant information. You can cite the information from there. So the big thing there is anything that is not common knowledge, you must cite. And as you see here with this very early draft of this particular AAPSL, we wound up going back and I pointed that out to her. We found the information, and then we were able to move on. So again, you want to tell a story, and you want that story to reflect what your school is about. If I didn't know anything about your school, what do you think is relevant for the reader to know? So if I go back to the school and the elementary school of which I was a principal in High Point, one of the things that I would note if I was writing the school profile was that the school recently lost a third of its population because a major housing project in the city was being torn down at the behest of the High Point Housing Authority, who received a Hope 6 grant and are looking to rebuild new and more modern housing. I would have included that because the fact that a third of the school students came from that one housing project, and those students have now since been displaced around other areas of High Point until they deal with this land. Another thing I would note is that the school sits literally right across the street from High Point University, a major private university in the state that is also growing by gobbling up land in the area because the school itself sits in an underserved, economically disadvantaged area. So again, with your school profile, you want to tell a story. Tell us about your school. Tell us anything that may be specific to your school. So you may serve a school that was built using, I don't know, I've seen everything from money built from a grant from the old tobacco companies. If you're in schools down east, or for that matter, even in Cabarrus County for the longest time, to anything locally that may be affecting your building, that may have an impact on your students or your publics, as it were. And then the other thing to remember there is to remember to cite that information. And again, the rule there is if it's not common knowledge, then you want to make sure you cite where that information came from. Again, that's kind of a big overview. Any high-level questions on the school profile before we move on to task 1?
Dr. Crawford, thank you. And remember, in your AAPSL helpful hints, in your AAPSL materials and resources, there is a completed AAPSL in there with a profile example, and then in your AAPSL helpful hints under the school profile section, there is an example as well. So in your Blackboard, there are resources. Thank you, Dr. Crawford. Task 1, Dr. Hamilton. And as Dr. Hamilton's bringing this up, just remember what we told you on Tuesday evening. Task 1, at this point, you are not identifying your most pressing need. You're not identifying the problem at this point. Many people try to do that in task 1, and Dr. Hamilton is going to share with you again, that is not your task in task 1. That will come, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hamilton at this time.
All right, thank you, Dr. Stedman. So right before you begin your overview of task 1, But right before you begin your task one, please remember that you will complete the school profile first and then task one begins. So in task one, you're going to do a research. You're going to do a review of the literature. You must have about what PLCs are. What are PLCs? And we went over Tuesday night about going to Gardner Webb Bulldog 1, searching professional learning communities, searching DeFore. Those one of your citations must be from DeFore about he's one of the seminal researchers about professional learning communities. I think you might learn a lot from that research because oftentimes in schools it's not implemented with research fidelity. Your information must be written in APA 7th edition, and you're going to want to include descriptors from the research, such as like, what is a professional learning community? What does a good, effective professional learning community look like? How are highly effective PLCs conducted? And like norms and protocols and things like that that you need to put together to have effective professional learning communities. I would say do that for your staff meetings and IEP meetings and everything else as well as an administrator. Conclude the research section with a complete description of your PLC design. So what is your PLC design? How is that structured? How are you going to use what you learned from your research to structure an effective PLC that you are going to be leading for this work that you are doing to get your administrative license and master's? Also, as a part of this, task one, prompt one, go ahead and meet with your administrator, get permission to convene a PLC, then send your administrator an email saying, thank you so much for meeting with me. Thank you for agreeing to let me convene a PLC. I just want confirmation that you do still agree. And then your administrator will email you back. And then you have that artifact that you need to include in this task. And also, even when you do your competency folio later on, you can use that as a part of your artifacts. So the evidence is like your meeting and things, but then that email is your artifact, and that will be an appendix. That will probably be your appendix A, your very first one. So what is a literature review? So a review of the literature is when you read multiple pieces of literature and you synthesize that together. I would say to you, avoid direct quotations unless you absolutely have to have a direct quotation, if there's no other way to say it. So really the best thing to do is go ahead and get 3 or 4 articles about PLCs, read them, jot down in your own words the main ideas and what was said, jot down the references for that, and then put what you've written collectively together. So here's an example like of a literature review. So this just tells you, like, Zhang says that professional learning communities was widely discussed for the last 30 years. So then, like it says, numerous studies have suggested that well-implemented PLCs can contribute to student learning outcomes. Well, all those people said that in their research. So you're not going to say this person said it, then this person said it. You're going to combine that. So you need to read your articles, synthesize your information, and then you have to make these references for each one. You're not going to just put everything that Dufour's article said and then everything that Lewis and Mark's article said. You're not going to do it that way. That's an annotated bibliography. This is a review of the literature. So that is the way you're going to want that to look. And so task one, prompt one, you are going to select your PLC members. You need to select 4 or 5 people for your PLC. And this is your second section. Your first section, of course, is your PLC research. Your second section is select your members. Document the criteria. Why did you select these folks? Did it represent a wide array of people in your building? Did it represent people who would be willing to work with you? And you do want people who are going to be willing to work with you. Did it represent like people from every area? So talk about why you chose the folks that you chose, and then identify them, list them, tell about them. So talk about again about why you chose them, who they are, what are their strengths, what are they going to contribute to this professional learning endeavor, and you can even add their educational credentials in there if you so choose. And then the next section is going to be your actual first PLC meeting. This is all in task 1, prompt 1. You're going to have a PLC meeting. You're not worried at this point for this first meeting about what's your problem and what are you going to be studying. This is simply to come up with a vision and a purpose for your PLC, to establish those norms and expectations so that you can run an effective meeting. You need to digitally invite these folks to the meeting with the date and the time. You need to have like a PowerPoint agenda or something that you're sending to them so that they know. And then you need to have an agenda of what you're going to be doing first, next, etc. You can start with introductions, whatever you want to start with, but have that, share that digitally, then save that, because that's also another artifact for you that you can use in your appendix, and then you can use later on in your competency folio. And remembering that if you create norms and expectations because you read in the research that creating norms and expectations is an important piece of that, then you're going to reference the author where you read that about. You're going to use references as you say, I'm doing this, I'm doing X because I read in my research that this helps to contribute to an effective PLC, then you're going to reference where you read it. So anytime that you are using information like that, you must include those references. And references do have to be in APA 7th edition. Make sure that your references from your narrative are cited correctly in the reference section. Your appendix, your appendices, that will be after your reference section. And at a minimum, your email that you get the permission from your administrator to conduct and convene a PLC will be Appendix A. So those go at the very end. But you can also do things in your appendices like attach your agenda, meeting minutes, and things like that, just to help substantiate the work that you've done. And remember to look at your template with the correct headings and subheadings and APA 7th edition back to that template, your AAPSL template. It is there for you. Please do not alter anything that is in black text color, because that stays just like it is. So please do not alter anything like that.
So Dr. Hamilton, if my PLC gets together and they start wanting to examine student discipline, can we do that?
Not in task 1, because we're not going to do that, because in task 2, which we're not talking about right now, right? That's a few weeks out. You're going to collect data from your school. That data is going to drive what your most pressing need is. So right now we don't know our most pressing need.
But can
your
there
data needs to also be something that can be, what your most pressing need turns out to be, also must be something that can be measured by a test score. And data and discipline can't be measured by a test score. Did you say discipline or you said discipline?
So you're saying, Dr. Hamilton, that discipline, they cannot even focus on discipline at this point, and they cannot focus on attendance at this point. Is that what we're hearing?
Well, that's what I think has always been the
Yeah,
case. You're making me question
okay.
myself. But
That's the truth.
you're making me question myself.
No, we're being facetious. What we're being doing.
Thank you. No, because those things cannot be measured by a test score.
Right. So,
but at this first PLC meeting, you're not going to talk about a most pressing need.
Right.
That's going to come later, and that's going to be driven by your data.
Okay. Okay. Thank you,
I
Dr.
had a
Hamilton.
pop quiz, a trick quiz.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. And what Dr. Hamilton has just shared with you, remember, this is what you should be working on as we speak. So this is important. What Dr. Revis is going to be sharing with you is coming up, and we're going to talk about it on Tuesday. So keep your ears attuned to it. You're going to hear this again on Tuesday, but we'll go deeper into it on Tuesday. Dr. Revis. Can't hear you.
Can you
Okay.
see my screen, Dr. Stedman?
Yes.
Okay. So, guys, I'm going to give you just a broad overview of task 2. So in task 1, all you're doing, well, that's not all you're doing, but you're doing some PLC research and you're convening an organizational meeting with your PLC team. In task 2, it's all about what we call our data dive. So you, as the facilitator of your PLC, you're going to facilitate a discussion with your PLC to first of all discuss what strategies we're going to use to collect data, what data sets are we going to use, and who will collect the data sets. Now, going back again, and sorry, Dr. Hamilton, we didn't mean to throw you, a trick question there. We were just trying to emphasize we are talking and convening this PLC in order to look at our state student performance assessment, performance and growth assessments. So as a PLC, you facilitate that discussion to determine what data sets you're going to collect and who's going to collect them. Next, you're going to talk about how we're going to analyze these data sets and what criteria are we going to use to determine our most pressing need. So you are, as the PLC leader, and you have to make it clear in your narrative that you are facilitating and leading. You're going to have to bring that group to a consensus around how we're going to determine what our most pressing need is within our student performance and growth data. And then you're going to collaboratively examine and disaggregate your data. Again, you're facilitating that, but you're facilitating that collaboration. So you're going to look at what subgroups you may decide to examine, any kind of historical data that you use, or did you just use your most recent data that from 2023? And what kind of growth data did you use? And then finally, you're going to facilitate a discussion deciding what did those data sets say to us? Where is our most pressing need? Where do we need to focus in order to make the most impact of our student learning and or student growth? And clearly identify that most pressing need. So that's the big overview of task 2. There's narrative in prompt 1. And in task 2, you have 2 prompts. You do the narrative work in prompt 1. And in prompt 2, you're doing a lot of sharing a lot of the graphic representation of some of the data that you facilitated your PLC to look through. And, we can get that off the school report cards. Summary report for NC report cards. This one shows 5th grade science. Again, another 5th grade science. So you're going to share some of your data sets, the most important data sets that you guys decided to look at. And you're going to conclude with that summary statement. What is our most pressing need? And that sets the stage for your next task. Any questions?
I've answered a couple in the chats, but I'll go ahead and say this. Once you get to your most pressing need in task 2, now again, don't go into it with too many preconceived ideas, because you'll be fooled a lot of times what it is. Once you get task 2 done, you've got to do a formal presentation to your administration. And once you meet with your administration, you're going to say, based on the PLC and our data dive and the results, this is what the most pressing need is, and this is how we came to that conclusion. Now, the question was asked, what if the principal wants us to do something else? Well, you work for the principal, and at that point, you identify what the most pressing need is. But if they don't want you to go in that direction, then you will have to do what they want you to do, except it must be measurable by some type of test. It cannot be discipline, and it cannot be attendance at this time. Okay?
Dr. Stedman, let me interject. In the chat, I have listed most all of the hot areas that your principal will want you to investigate with a PLC. You'll get to them all. If you look, I've got, when you get to the AAPSL, you'll look at empowerment, you'll look at teacher evaluation, walkthroughs, professional development. You'll look at those things with the AAPSL. When you get to the OMA, you'll look at the budget, the master schedule, EC, your special POPs programs, you'll look at them then. When you get to the SKIP, you'll look at parent involvement. When you get to the CAP, you'll look at school culture, which is attendance. That's when discipline comes in. Teacher working condition survey, the advanced ed survey, or the South Carolina survey, parent and teacher survey. So we'll eventually get to all the hot topics, but we start with instruction. Always remember, when you're heading west to east in North Carolina, you go around the curve in Raleigh, there at the outer loop, and you head toward Wilmington. The first exit you come to the backside of Garner is Jones Sausage Road. You know what they do at Jones Sausage? They make sausage. You know what we do in school? We teach kids. It's first and foremost. That's what we do. If you don't understand that, and you don't understand that test scores matter, get out now. This is not the business for you. We keep a report card, we keep scores because it matters. As a principal, your job is to make a good number go up or a bad number go down. And if you don't, they'll get somebody else. That's the way the world works. This is grown people talk tonight. So we start our PLCs looking at the gaps in our data, in our subgroups, in our building, because every school in North and South Carolina has to have a closing the gap plan for the school instructional. We are teaching you the 5 functions of building a school improvement plan. That's what the 6 evidences are. We start with the academic piece, then the personnel, then the operational piece, then the parent involvement piece, then the cultural TWC piece. And we put them all together in the 6th one, making a school improvement plan. That is what you're doing. As Dr. Crawford mentioned, that's one of the first things that you're legally required to do as a principal every year, is have a school improvement plan that starts with a closing the gap program academically from your measured test scores, as Dr. Hamilton said. She sits in that job. She knows what's important, and she knows that that has to be number 1 in her building. Kids achieving is why we have school. So that's my sermon. I was going to wait to the end, but I saw too many questions. So no, you can't do discipline in this one. No, you can't do attendance. No, you can't talk about parent involvement. None of that stuff in this one. It's got to be measured by a standardized test to be in the AAPSL. That's just the way it goes. And so the question now is advice on picking PLC members when you really don't know. You know it's going to be something academic. I wouldn't get the PE teacher, or I hate to throw PE people under the bus, but might be 1 or 2 on the screen. But I'd get somebody who was focused on academics. You don't need people that just roll the ball out either metaphorically or physically. You understand that this is an academic task. And so don't get people like me that, just show up to eat lunch and play ball in the gym. Don't get them. Get the smart people, get the good ones. And you know what I'm talking about. Some teachers are focused on teaching in academics and some aren't. Don't pick the ones that aren't. Because, that's self-inflicted. You did that to yourself. You need to pick people who focus on academics. The good teachers, you know who they are. If you've been there more than a week, you know who can teach in your building, who can't. That's who you want. You want the good ones.
Dr. Lynn, we're getting a lot of chats about I'm the instructional coach. I'm already on a PLC. I'm a department chair. I'm on the SIT team. Can we use these same ones as our PLC that we're convening? Can I co-lead?
If you lead it, you can do it, but you got to lead. That's the whole point. That's why you start with how to build one of these and lead it. Norms and values. What are we got to be about? You got to be in the lead. You know, you can't be sitting in the back like a Baptist on the back row. You got to be on the front row. You got to be leading this organization.
And then what else I would add is that this PLC is going to have a specific purpose. And when you have other groups, I'll just say the SIT team, they also have a specific purpose. And then you're going to be overworking this group because they're going to be meeting more than once. This cannot be like a part of your SIT team or something like that. This is a separate thing. So you don't want to overwork. You might have 5 teachers in your school in the SIT team who are the hardest working teachers in the school or whatever, but you don't want to overwork them either. And so it's going to be 2 separate things. And you need to be the leader. The reason you need to convene and you need to create and you need to start from scratch and you need to be the leader is because that's what you're coming to school to do. And if you don't practice it now, you're not going to be able to do that when you get your job.
Question is can you use K2 assessment data? Yes. I'm just going to call it Dibbles, M class, I class, whatever you want to call it. Absolutely. You can, that's what you use in the primary grades is your M class data or I class or Dibbles, whichever you prefer. Yes, that's what you would use. It is a standard assessment. It is a state driven assessment. It is reported. That's important. It can't be, it can't be a test. Can you use a checkbook in a high school in a civics class? No, that's not a standardized test. EOC, EOG, Dibbles. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for, look at your state report card for your school. That's what we're looking for. What's reported on your state report card? That's the academic piece on your state report card is what we're looking for. Let me pull one up right fast just to make sure that everybody's on the same page because work keys, don't like work keys, but I can live with it if that's what you're doing. But now I want all of them. I don't want just one little piece of it. I want the whole deal. If you're doing work keys for CTE.
And Dr. Lamb, we've got sitting principals here and all of us have been principals. And I can remember there were so many needs academically that I couldn't always get to it. This is an opportunity, people, for you to help the administration identify a problem that they have had to put on the back burner maybe sometime because they can't get to it. It's not supposed to be easy. Don't, not to tie into something that's already being done. It should be challenging and it should be something that hopefully is different out there.
Can y'all see my screen?
Yes. Star and I ready can be used.
Look at there.
That's not last year. I exceeded this year. That's year before.
Yeah, that's year before. This is 22. Yeah. 21, 22. I didn't have the 22, 23 yet. But anyway, you can see Dr. Hamilton's school is an A. She exceeded growth this year. Performance score, history, academic growth. You see all those that she exceeds every year. You see these scores. Income and student readiness, disadvantage, student performance, math performance, reading performance. You see these things, science performance. This is what we're looking at. English learner, read to achieve, met grade 3 benchmark. That's what you're talking about. Read to achieve, benchmarks, test participation. This is what we're talking about. And then you'll use pretty much all of this report card before you're done. You'll need some of this stuff for me in 603, teacher qualifications, national board, attendance, disciplinary, all of these things here, average class size, student enrollment, suspensions. We'll use all of this before it's over with. We'll teach you how to use the whole thing. But right now, we're focused on the top half, which is these measures here. Now, in high school, if we went to a high school, let me go back one. let's see, we'll go back to New Hanover. We'll just pick on them tonight. Cape Fear, Bradley, Carolina Beach, Middle, Elementary, College Park, and elementary. Oh, wait a minute. Laney, here's where I want to go. Come on, Laney High School, you can do it.
Home of Michael Jordan, that's where he played high school.
That's exactly right.
That's
Home of Michael Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Career pathways, concentration completed. Career participation, industry, recognized credentials, proficiency areas, other measures, passing English learner, 4-year graduation, enrollment in advanced courses, test participation, nationally certified teacher qualifications, environmental. So as you can see, the problem here is you don't see work keys on this. I can live with it, but I'm not giggling because we don't have any comparative basis. I mean, you know, I fill up this screen, and you think, well, Dale's just sitting close to the screen. But if I was, if I was standing next to a normal person, you would see, well, he's just a big overgrown beast. You got to have a comparative basis. The problem with this is how'd you do last year? How are you doing? What's your history? Which way are you going? Are you going up? Are you going down? Is this something that used to be good? It's not. This is doing better than it used to be. Let's work on something else. You got to have a comparative basis. That's the whole notion here. Is you can see where you've been and where you're going, and you can compare yourself to your district and to the state. That's what we like. We like a comparative basis. We do comparative accountability. We're doing growth. You know, eventually we'll get smart enough to do growth only. That's about what you do with them. Comparative is about who you got. Growth is about what you do with them. We'll eventually get there. But right now we're still mired in comparative accountability. How do you compare with the state? How do you compare with the local? How do you compare with how you did last year and the year before? That's the notion. We see what's trending up, what's trending down. These are all things that we factor into our most pressing need. Did we used to read at grade level and now we're not? We used to not be on grade level, but now we are. But now our math's down. Those are all things you have to give a rationale as to why you picked your most pressing need, and you have to have a comparative basis to do that. And that's why we like for you to go to your report card. If you've got work keys data from the last 5 years, I can live with that. If you can show which trend it's going, but don't pick something that's the best thing in your school. That's not your most pressing need. The problem with saying we're going to do work keys is you've already picked whether it's your most pressing need or not. But again, I can live with it. But the whole point of this exercise is to be able to look at your school as a school administrator and say, when we're doing that school improvement plan, boy, we need to get on this. We're not doing very good over here. We don't come in with preconceived notion. We look at our data every year. We look at the school and we look at teacher data. Look at EVOS. We'll teach you that later too. Dr. Hamilton will. We'll teach you how to look at EVOS. I'll explain how it works. She'll show you how in real life how to use it to make teacher decisions. We got to look at comparative data to make decisions that to get the most performance out of our schools. I told you that last year that Dr. Crawford a year or so ago was in High Point. He had the highest growth of any school in 3 counties around, 3.5. They exceeded. They were 3.5. That's unheard of growth. But he didn't get there by focusing on the stuff that they were doing well. They got there by focusing on making decisions on what they needed to work on all the time. I can speak for him. I've known him long enough. I know that he's too much like me. He knows how to do this. You come in every day and you try to make things better. You don't pick the easy stuff. We don't do low-hanging fruit in this business. We tackle the problems that need to be tackled, that aren't doing well. That's what your job is, to focus the organization on improving in certain areas. And you can lift everything up by doing that. But if you only do the things you do well, you can't outrun your test scores. The good ones can't hide the bad ones, folks. That's just the way it works. There was a time when you could do that. You know, if you had enough good ones, you could hide the bad ones. Can't do that anymore. You'll get killed on growth. And so you got to understand, you got to go in this with an open mind, and you know, start looking at your scores. Where are we really doing well, and where are we not doing well? Don't have a preconceived notion, but we want something that's measurable and comparable. Now, this will save me, you know, you had to hear this rant tonight. This will save me a lot of trouble later on when y'all start turning in your task 1s and 2s, and then you pick something that we have no way to measure if you do it well or not. Just go ahead and think now is look at my report card. Look at what's reported for my school. Let's drill down in our data. And, you know, but again, we're not going to focus on teacher professional development or attendance. We're not going to focus on discipline or lack of parental involvement. We'll get there. But those things, I hate to say it because I don't teach 601. I just, you know, I'm not an expert. I just stayed at the Holiday Inn Express last night. But most important thing in school is achievement. I teach operations, but that's because I'm not smart enough to teach the academic piece. I just do operations. But the most important thing, and why we start you, as Dr. Stedman said here, is this is the most important thing in school. Making a good number go up or a bad number go down.
Dr. Lamb, just a reminder, questions keep coming in. Just remember, in task 1, you are not identifying anything in task 1. That is in task 2. So you don't focus on reading. You don't focus on math. That comes when you begin looking at the data with your team. So task 1 is not about a subject area. The question came up again about how many people on your team. Remember, we said 4 to 5. They all must be educators. They must be people that work in that school. So those things were explained already, but I just wanted to reiterate that again. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Dr. Crawford, reiterate what you said in the chat. You want people that want to invest in you. Dr. Crawford's got a great point there. I want to hear that.
Yeah, so, you know, a lot of questions about who we get, how do we get them. So part of what you have to do in this job, and it's the most difficult part, is you're going to have to learn to manage relationships. And as a leader, you're going to have to manage them not only as a group, but by grade levels and then by individuals. And so you want to find people in your building as you're going through this process who will look at you and say, okay, I get it. Yeah, I'm willing to give up a little extra time to help you out. And so somebody asked, well, what are some strategies? Well, ask. I mean, really keep it simple. Start with people that you have relationships with. Somebody else said, well, you know, we plan by grade level. So what do I do then? Well, go outside the grade level. Part of what you're going to have to do as an administrator is look at data across the board. And at this point in my career, I've done elementary, middle, and high. And so I've had to look at data. How did first grade do last year compared to second grade? I've had to look at our incoming 8th grade math scores to look at how we were going to do the 2 sections of Algebra 1 for the kids that we know how to do it. Right now, I'm pouring over incoming 6th grade data to make sure we have those kids scheduled. I'm trying to figure out why of the 342 students that I have in my building that are ESL, why a third of them are also EC. So you're going to have to look at data across multiple points of view and keep all that foolishness in your head. So when you're looking at strategies, want to get through these next 15 weeks, keep it simple. Try to find people that are willing to invest in you. If you're in a certain structure, you may have to look at going outside of that. Now, if that becomes problematic, then you'll reach out to one of your professors or even your CC1 to see if we can't find some workarounds. And if we can't, then we can work within the confines of the systems that you have. But ultimately speaking, depending on the size of the school, you'll find people that will be able to invest in you. Just be upfront and forthright about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and then start from there.
Excellent, excellent.
Okay.
Dr. Nutting, I want to hear from the central office perspective on how important standardized test scores are. Dr. Nutting retired within the last month as the chief academic person in Iowa Statesville. How, at the central office, how important are academics, Dr. Nutting?
Absolutely number one, unfortunately. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's what your Board of Education is looking at. And, you know, your superintendent is managing to the Board of Education, as good or bad as that might be, as hard as that might be to swallow. What you're looking at is academic performance first and foremost.
Exactly right. Dr. Revis? Dr. Revis is a sitting school board member in a large county in this state, in North Carolina. She's a sitting member. She was elected. You know, so Dr. Revis, do y'all ever talk about academics in school board meetings?
Yes, we do. And we have high expectations of our students and our teachers. And we set that as a priority. We talk about teaching and learning. Again, that's the business we're in, teaching and learning. So we want to make sure that we are providing the resources and everything that teachers and principals need in order to facilitate that learning. But most certainly, that is the marker that we look at. Not exclusively, but a huge piece of it.
Absolutely. So you've heard from two sitting very successful principals. You've heard from two old geezers, me and Dr. Stedman, who used to be, we're has-beens, so our opinion don't really count. But you've heard from a sitting school board member and a recently, within the last month, retired head of academics for a large district in the state. You've heard this is what matters, folks. This is it. This is how we start and end. This is the alpha and this is the omega. If we don't get this right, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter if lunch is good or if it's on time every day if we don't learn anything. Or the buses run on time over on my side on the operations. You know, that the janitor gets the building open every morning. That, you know, that's secondary to the academic piece that has to come first. And you've got to keep that first and foremost throughout this program. You understand that everything that we do, we don't do it for the, I'm going to insult a lot of you. We can't be champions for teachers as administrators. We have to be champions for kids. That's a big cultural shift. It's a big mind shift. It's a big, you know, it changes your lens, your view, but it can't be about teachers, folks. It has to be about kids. And the point about kids is their academic achievement. We can't give them self-esteem. They have to earn it through the academic lens. So that's where we're headed. I've just given you an overview of the entire program, but that's the notion here.
And Dr. Lamb, you forget this old geezer. I have an academy and I have a report card as well.
That's exactly right.
And I will tell you, our preliminary reports show that we went from a D school to a C school, high growth this year. So
excellent. That's exactly right. Dr. Stedman actually is the superintendent of a charter school, folks. Everyday job. That's what he does for real. I'm the only geezer that works at the university and hangs around and has lunch and hangs around the water cooler and pretends all day. Everybody else they're working people that have real jobs. Dr. Stedman is the superintendent of a charter school.
If you were going to call me old geezer, I was going to clarify things. So.
Well, you're 2 weeks older than me, so I can say that. I know how old I am.
Okay. Dr. Hamilton?
Yes.
You're next, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So number one, you're going to do your school profile. Number two, you are going to do task one, which is research PLC, create your PLC, have that first meeting where you established norms. Dr. Revis went over task two, how you are going to collect data, and your PLC with you as the leader will identify the most pressing need. Now, at the end of task two, and I wanted to say this, so I'm glad I'm saying going back, at the end of task two, your last sentence needs to say, the PLC led by me used these data points, whatever they were, to determine the most pressing need is, and then explicitly say that. You need to explicitly say that sentence. We determined as the PLC through these data, that the most pressing need is whatever it is, kindergarten reading fluency, kindergarten letter identification, whatever it is. All right, that's where task 2 ends. Now, in task 3, you're going to say, okay, well, kindergarten reading fluency is our most pressing need. So in task 3, you are going to do more research. You are going to research kindergarten reading fluency or whatever your most pressing need is, and you're going to learn how to solve that problem. You're finding a research-based solution. You're going to do your research. You're going to collect a presentation to your PLC, and you're going to present the research and what it says to do about the problem to your PLC. Then your PLC is going to work together with you as the leader to determine which research-based solutions are most applicable and will help the most in your school, in your setting, to help improve your most pressing need. Now in task 3, you have 2 prompts. The first one is your research. You're going to do a review of the literature, and you're also going to do an annotated bibliography. And then prompt 2 of task 3 are visual representations, and you will have some narrative. Remember, as we said Tuesday, all visual representations will be in the form of figures. Task 3, prompt 1, you're going to research best practices that align with your most pressing need. Again, you're going to have an annotated bibliography and a review of the literature. The best practice suggestions need to also utilize a form of technology not already being used on this population. Your annotated bibliography is going to have a minimum of 8 research resources. You need 5 regular resources and 3 resources that talk about online tools that you are not currently using. These 8 resources are research solutions and remedies to the problem you identified in task 2, your most pressing need. And you will also conduct a review of the literature that requires 3 more resources, and these need to also be about best practices about your most pressing need. I alluded to this in task 1, a review of the literature. I gave you an example of that in task 1. That's when you're going to read at least 3 different research articles, and you're going to synthesize that information, and you're going to make that as a part of your literature review. And an annotated bibliography, and we'll talk more about this later, that's where you read one article, and then you summarize that. Then you read another one and summarize that. So those are the difference between those 2 things, but that's what you'll do in task 3. And of course, we'll talk about that more. That's task 3, prompt 1. Then in task 3, prompt 2, you are going to provide multiple visuals. That is more than 2. The difference between prompt 1 and prompt 2 in task 3 is that prompt 1 is a writing narrative piece, and prompt 2 will have visual aids, of course, in the form of figures, and you will have some narrative with that as well. There's an example of someone's task 3, prompt 2, where they had looked at vocabulary, and they did a bubble map to talk about and describe what vocabulary and how that could maybe help their students. And then they had a note at the bottom that says the PLC worked as a team to look up components of vocabulary, and they listed them on that bubble map. Then at the very end, what I would suggest that you do is create a chart like this that has the tenets that you're looking for what you need for your 3 online tools, and just list them on there. And then have your PLC, after they've examined each of them, have them like check the box there if they met each of those criteria. So are they grade specific? Are they affordable? Are they free? That could be one of them, right? Are they hands-on? Are they interactive? And then that will help your PLC look at the different components of each online tool to decide which would be best for your school. And then you would have a note. And of course, then again, at the bottom, it says, based on this chart, Study Island was the best online tool for this particular school. So that is task 3, research, and then presenting that research to your PLC so that they can help you decide what would be the best intervention for the students at your school to help address your most pressing need that was identified in task 2.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. And again, remember This is the whole elephant. We don't expect you to comprehend all of this tonight. We're just making it's an awareness. So, task 3, there's a lot, but you will be ready for task 3 when we get to task 3. Okay, Dr. Revis, task 4.
Dr. Stedman, can you see my screen that says share the action plan? Or
AAPSL action plan summary. There it
Yeah.
is. Yes.
you see it?
Yes.
Do you see the one that says school improvement framework?
South Carolina School. Yeah. SC.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. I just want to make sure that it did. The second one popped up.
Yeah.
Guys, task 4 is kind of your culminating activity here. You do all this, identifying your most pressing need, you do your research, you select the tools that you think will address the issues, the most pressing need. So what you're doing here is really simulating a school improvement process. And this is actually the South Carolina school improvement process, unless it's been changed in the last year. So task 1 is where you're going to establish your PLC and have your organization meeting. And I'm going to overlay our AAPSL task along this school improvement cycle. In task, in task 2 is where you're doing your data analysis, your data dive, and identifying your most pressing need. We always have to start by looking at our data sets, regardless of whether we're talking about student learning, parent involvement, whatever. We always start by examining our data sets. Next, in task 3, we are going to be doing some research on our most pressing need and selecting programs or strategies. Now, again, this is research. We're not going to call up our best friend who works across town at an elementary school to find out what programs they're using. Because number one, they might not even have the same pressing need as you do. We are going to the research. And in task 4, this is the culminating activity where you're going to develop an action plan for the identified problem. Task 4 will also talk about how we implement that plan, what are our implementation goals, roles, responsibilities, short and long-term goals. It's also going to talk about what are our indicators of success. We're going to list formative and summative assessments that we're going to look at to determine whether the plan we've implemented and the research-based programs or strategies that we've implemented are being effective. And then we go back to the revision phase. So again, this is a school improvement cycle. Here is the graphic organizer that you must use. Let me underscore that word must. You must use this action plan graphic organizer. And you're going to list collaboratively with your PLC the activities you believe you need to do and implement in order to address your most pressing need. And we'll go through this organizer in much more detail, but you've got to use that. And you've got to narratively explain what you put on your action plan. I'm not going to go into all of this, but I always suggest starting here first, filling this out with your committee or your PLC, and then doing the narrative work as a result of that. Again, required graphic organizer. And then in prompt 2, you've got to share this action plan with your administrative team. And you're going to talk about really where the rubber meets the road is how do we share this information and how do we garner our support of our school around the work of the action plan.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Revis. Okay. Are you through, Dr. Revis?
I am. I'm going to stop share right now. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Revis. So you've gotten an overview of what the AAPSL looks like. Now, what Dr. Crawford's going to do, he's going to talk about the 21 required competencies that you must complete every semester. And he's going to talk about, of those 21 competencies, what you have to do that's related to the AAPSL, Dr. Crawford.
All right. Back to school for a lot of us, so I know just hang in there. I promise we will get through this so very quickly. Come on. Thank you. All right, so there are 21 competencies that you'll go through each semester. And the big thing about these competencies is that what you want to do is, as you go through each of these activities, you want to fuse what you're learning was part of the course content with the actual clinical experience that you're going to be working with throughout the semester. So basically what you're learning with what you're doing throughout the course of the year. So there's 21, you will do 12 when you do the AAPSL, and then we'll do the other 9 when we get to the AAPTEL. So again, don't stress out of it. Don't stress over it. We'll get to it here shortly. Those competencies, and I'm not going to read them to you, but they run from everything from communications, technology, to what does it look like to be visionary. And then it gives you a definition of what each of those competencies are. What I did was so I chose one. I think I did this a couple of years ago at my former building. So if I were a student and I was working on the time management competency, because that's something that you are going to have to learn how to do as an administrator. I approached this particular competency from the standpoint of, at the time, I was a principal who didn't have an assistant principal. And so I then said, one of the things I have to do is make time to both coach my teachers, which research has shown really enhances skills, but also to complete the formal teacher evaluation process as prescribed by General Statute 115 C333. And so what I did was I sent an email out to the staff where I laid out how teachers will be grouped for the first round of observations. I also emailed them about when they will begin, the pre-observation form, setting things like the PDP date. So what I did and I did this from the standpoint of a student, what did I do, or what would I do as a student, or if I were in your shoes, in demonstrating that I have done something to meet this competency? And so here I laid out specific time frames, dates, why I did what I was able to do, throw in a little bit of research behind that, the basic difference between coaching and evaluations, again, which are legally obligated, but don't really get you much in the way of growing your teachers. It's really finding that time to coach where you're going to grow your teachers, especially in the schools that I have worked with. And then I ended, this level of time management is critical to balance the time teachers need with school administrators to grow professionally and effectively engage students, as well as have the time to complete statutory requirements regarding the state evaluation process. So again, there are 21 of these that you will work throughout the school year. I'm not going to read them to you. They're going to be in your book, and we will. So I would glance over them as we begin this process. The other thing that I would highly suggest that you do is begin keeping a separate folder for different emails. So let's say, for instance, you intervene between another teacher and an angry parent for whatever reason that parent's angry, and you're able to navigate whatever that situation is. You would write up whatever that was. Hey, listen, thanks for letting me sit in. I'm glad we were able to do X, Y, or Z for the parent and the kid. An email like that, with that particular skill, let me find one for you, would actually something like that could fall under customer focus It could fall under emotional intelligence. It could fall under communication, conflict management. So you're going to be dealing with things that could actually fall under multiple steps. I don't think you've got to come up with something individual for every single one. You're going to work with things that will fall under 2 or 3, but just start being able to start thinking in terms of making the connection between what you're doing with your coursework and the actual work that you're going to be doing in this lens. And then finally, and I know Dr. Lamb will mention it at some point, this is also a good time for all of you to begin to change your lens from that classroom, which you're going to have to keep with because all of you or most of you are working with kids from day to day, but you're going to have to start thinking less about how you would think with you and kids versus start looking at the entire school. Everything from what does it look like when I walk from my car into the front office? Have you ever listened to how the secretary answers the phone? Have you ever walked down the hall and heard a group of teachers talking loudly in the hallway about a kid's test score or whatever have you? I tell people all the time, and I've worked at some of the most difficult schools in the state of North Carolina, and even with all that, my gray hairs don't come from kids. My gray hairs come from adults. They are the ones that are going to drive, and you won't truly see that until you really get your hands dirty and you have your first WTF moment, and you will. And I'll just end with this. I've been at this now 25 years, and I thought I had collected all of the been there, done that t-shirts that I was going to collect in my career. And I can tell you, Winston-Salem has thrown me several curves, up to and including trying to figure out what to do with the teacher that took a kid to a club. Those are the type of things you're going to have. Yeah, say that backwards. I kid you not. But anyway, start thinking about changing your lens as you go through this process, and don't look at this as a teacher. Look at this as a leader, and you will begin to really see exactly what we're doing and why you're doing what you do.
Thank you so much, Dr. Crawford. I want to thank all of the MSA staff for such a wonderful job this evening. Just remember, again, this is the whole elephant. We're not expecting you to understand it all tonight, but we will continue to break it down one bite at a time during class on Tuesday evening. Next Thursday, we will be back again, and Dr. Revis and Dr. Hamilton, they do an excellent job providing instruction on how APA 7th edition applies to this program. And with that in mind, Dr. Lamb, I'm going to let you bring closing remarks and whatever needs to be said in the end.
Okay, so when you do task 5, you're going to do, when you close out your evidences, you always write your competencies. What you're doing when you write those competencies is you tell us what you did from this evidence work or your clinical work, your intern work, that led you to be competent in that area of communication, conflict management, emotional intelligence. You are arguing, you are presenting your case that I've done something that's made me competent in that area. And then later on in this semester, the artifacts, as Dr. Crawford gave you great advice there, keep all this stuff, screenshot it. We want things, we want artifacts that show, that prove that you did what you said you did, because we're going to put those in the folio that you're going to create, and we're going to put that in your bigger task stream folio. We're going to send it to the state, but more importantly, we're going to let you create your own so that you can publish and share it with prospective employers. They don't want to hear about what you did. They want to see what you did. They want these artifacts that you generate from doing this work, this competency work. So yes, you're first going to argue to us that I'm competent. I know how to do conflict management. I did this that shows that I'm competent at that, just like Dr. Crawford gave a great example of conflict management, where you helped intercede and cool out an angry parent. Now, a lot of parents, what you'd like to say is your kid's an idiot and it's hereditary, but you can't say that. you have to work on your conflict management skills. And so that's what you would do. But if you had a screenshot of that email, then you would have an artifact from when you did that. So be thinking down the road here is I've got to get the folks at Gardner Webb. They've got to understand that I'm building competency here, and then the state wants to see proof of that competency later on. But I'll show you how to build that. It doesn't take about 2 minutes. Even I can do it. And so we'll do that in one of our sessions down the road here before too much longer. But Dr. Stedman is right. You've seen the whole elephant tonight. And that's not metaphor for me, but you've seen the entirety of this evidence. We're going to do this. They're going to work with you on each individual part now. Everything that we've covered tonight, including the video, will be in Blackboard. The materials are already there. This video will be there. There's no secrets in this program. We show it all. Some people, that scares them away, but you need to see the totality of, and you need to learn to do that as an administrator. As Dr. Crawford said, you need to see the total picture. We have to be big picture people. We can't be, down in the weeds people. Many times teachers go to their rooms, and we all had that experience. That's the only world is just inside your room. You gotta widen your lens. And that's what we're doing by showing you all of each evidence. We'll show all of it to start with to get you to start working from a wider lens and then work your way in. We work from out to in school administration, not the other way around. And that's what we talk about, changing your lens. We start out and then narrow down versus teachers who are narrowed down already. We need you to switch that administrative lens. You'll get started this semester. When you get to me next semester, it'll be awful. I'll beat you unmercifully next semester, but don't worry about that. It'll be okay. You'll live through it. People survive it. Overwhelmed, but you got to trust the process. That's exactly right, Tiffany. You got to trust the process. We get 95% of the folks through this. I'm telling you, everything is planned out. There'll be no surprises. Everything is in every shell, every course, every semester that you're going to do. We know exactly what you're going to do on every day that you're with us, either the year or 20 months that you're with us. We know every day what we're going to do with you. We don't work on hope. We have a plan, and if you'll stick with us, you'll get through. And you won't. We rarely have anybody that does not. And your portfolio will be pre-assessed, and you will get your license. You'll go on about your life, and you'll probably even you might even come to graduation and hug us. Who knows? It's happened. It could happen. Isn't that what they used to say? Let me close with a picture, as I always do. Again, this is one, this is a graduation picture. Let me get this one here. And this lady, she trusted Gardner Webb. She knew Dr. Stedman. He was her high school principal. She trusted Gardner Webb and was with us all the way through the master's, postmaster's, and doctoral program, every step of the way. And she trusted us as hundreds or thousands have trusted us over the last. This is our 13th year doing this in this modified format of portfolios assessment in North Carolina and South Carolina. We've been doing this for 13 years. We've been doing this since 2010. It's not our first day. We're number one for a reason. I keep bringing that up. It's not being boastful, but we don't hope. We plan, and we won't let you fall. We'll be there with you. We meet every other week to talk about how students are progressing. If somebody's got a problem, we'll get somebody. We'll get on it. Do not hesitate. Share with us if you got problems, if you got issues. We want to know. We want you to. Our success is your success, and that's how I'm going to end the evening. Our success is your success. I don't have any great words of wisdom for you as we depart this evening. I do want to say that we're thankful that you're here with us. I'm looking in my bag right here. I had a couple of things that I wanted to. I wrote myself a couple of notes here, but again, my closing statement is this. I don't care what religion you are, it doesn't matter. But you need faith to get you through. When times get hard, you need to be a person of faith. Whatever it is, you need to embrace that faith. Whether you're Baptist, Catholic, Muslim, it doesn't matter. You need to be a person of faith and understand that we are people of faith who will pull you through. Our faith is what pulls us through. It'll pull you through. So I'm going to close with a prayer tonight. I won't do this but this one time, but I'm going to close with a prayer tonight. So if you'll pray with me, we'll be done. This is my favorite prayer. This is from Dr. Martin Luther King. Oh God, we thank thee for thy church founded on thy word that challenges us to do more than sing and pray, but go out and work as though the very answer to our prayers depended on us and not upon thee. Help us to realize that man was created to shine like the stars and live on through all eternity. Keep us, we pray, in perfect peace. Help us walk together, pray together, sing together, and live together until the day when all God's children, black, white, red, and yellow, will rejoice in one common band of humanity in the kingdom of our Lord and of our God. We pray, amen.
Thank you, Dr. Lamb. And thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your week, and we will see you on Tuesday. Hey, good night, everybody.
All right.
Good night.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
I'm just curious about the stuff that we're recording in our log. And I know that I'm going to have a meeting with my advisor next week, but there's some stuff happening this week. And so I just am curious about how that all works. So are we, so 100 hours is based on us completing this 5 tasks. Do we have to record the hours that we're working on those tasks on our log?
You will have to, and Suzette, that will be explained more in detail with during class time. We in fact, Dr. Revis and I are planning to spend a little bit of time starting that on Tuesday.
Okay.
And that will explain. Now, whose class are you in, Suzette?
I think I'm in Dr. Hamilton's class.
Okay, Dr. Hamilton will do the same thing. She and Dr. Crawford will begin probably on Tuesday, breaking it down into chunks and talking about the
To put
internship
on.
process. Yes. So
Okay.
if you can just hold that until Tuesday.
No problem.
I think you'll be able to understand it better that way.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Suzette.
Can I piggyback off of what she said? So there's like no backlog or anything. Like I conducted a PD today. Like, could I go ahead and put that down, or the date has to start after we meet with our?
No. You can start from the time school started. You know, you can go ahead and use
Teachers reported back or school started?
Well, if you've got some good things that you helped with that were leadership opportunities, even before teachers started back, then some of that could count, Kashimi.
Okay.
You just word that out with your clinical coach too, whoever your coach is.
Okay.
Word that out with them. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Y'all have a good night.
Okay. Good night, everybody. See you on Tuesday.